Hello everyone, my name is Uthris and welcome back to some Space Engineers. We are going to be making a new and kind of final light small ship design here. And what kind of signifies the light and small ship design is simply the length of our landing pad that we've been kind of following with all of these vehicles, be that the light fighter and bomber variants to the miner and welder. This has been kind of our testing bed for getting some good vanilla craft to you all. And at the end of this episode too, or I just can't announce it now. Anyways, these vehicles are going to be uploaded to the Steam Workshop. So if you want to go ahead and download them, you can. There's going to be a link to the whole pack that is essentially going to have each individual ship for you guys. So if you want to use them in your own worlds, you're definitely more than welcome to do so. Today, we're going to be making our final utility ship. It's going to be like a cargo moving vessel that should fill the need of picking up ships for salvage, or picking up cargo crates and moving them around your base. So we're just going to hop right into it and get to build. Alright, so let's get this thing underway. We built some of this on stream the other week, and so that's why a lot of these core internals are already laid out. But I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of a rundown of kind of what we got here, right? We're going to have 4 total large atmospheric thrusters facing downwards. That's going to provide probably 90% of our vertical thrust. We have 3 atmospheric thrusters facing the rear so that we can propulse ourselves forward, 2 facing the front for slowing capabilities, and 4 minor thrusters facing each direction laterally. This thing's going to fly preferably in straight lines in very parallel fashion to the ground. No steep banking, nothing like that. We want those attachment points to be very squared off at perpendicular angles. That way this thing can hopefully fly as well as possible. It also got quite a large battery supply in there, because this is a lot of thrust to be throwing onto one ship there. And as I just watched the ship do a body slam. I totally forgot that happened on camera. Rotors are fun, kids. Rotors are fun. I'm using the build vision mod here to adjust things. I find that an almost required mod at this point. Why this isn't in the base game is a little beyond me, because what this allows you to do is essentially adjust settings to blocks while looking at them outside of the K menu, so that we can get the upper limit set, the lower limit set correctly, the velocity that we want to have here, and all that fun stuff all set without having to go into a cockpit and potentially lose vision of what you're looking at, right? Other capabilities of the ship is these items here that we're working on with these rotors. And rotors, I know, is basically inviting Lord Clang to the party, but I figured it would be a good way to do this. We'll find out long term how good of a plan this was, but you kind of never know, right? I do want to throw in some additional vertical thrusters in this attachment point part of the ship, just so that it has a little extra vertical thrust. Who knows? Might need it, right? But essentially, the 2 arms that are on rotors, those have landing gear. Those will rotate forward. Those landing gear can attach to things kind of however you see fit, right? So you might cut off a piece of metal and then just pick up a piece of scrap with that, whether it be a ship or an actual piece of scrap, right? The merge block on the front is kind of like the ultimate connection point, okay? So let's say you have a crashed vessel that still has maybe some power, maybe it has some lifting thrusters itself, it's pretty heavy, and maybe you want those thrusters and gyros of that salvage operation to assist this ship in itself. You can always attach a merge block to that salvage and dock this thing up directly. The 2 grids will become one, and that's a 100% solid connection point that doesn't really introduce any sort of weirdness to this. Here, of course, we're just testing the connection a little bit. It's super important to do a lot of testing when it comes to this stuff. You kind of never know. And this is just with rotor lock on, not even inertia dampening on here. So obviously these are pretty strong rotors, pretty good. With inertia dampening, they do even better on there. It can essentially already pick up something that is the same weight as itself. So it is essentially carrying times 2 its current flying weight. It does have a medium cargo container. It does have its own connection port on the interior, just like a lot of our other builds so far. You know, that's going to be a standard across the Uthris fleet here. We're going to lightly armor this thing. The armor is less for combat reasons, more for looks, and more for protecting those thrusters, right? They need to be somewhat covered, just so that if I bump into anything, hopefully the armor takes the damage, not the thruster, and I don't lose a whole thruster right away, right? That's kind of the goal there. A lot of the base armor design shape, again, heavily referencing what we already have established here, and it's kind of a sweeping short winglet style on here, right? Because we're trying to keep everything to scale of this launch pad down below. And again, these tutorials aren't necessarily, or these speed builds aren't necessarily for you guys to follow along. You're not going to be able to follow along to these, right? I make these quick so I can kind of go over the big arching design decisions, but I want you guys to be able to go through and just take inspiration from this for your own builds. Don't make an exact replica of what I'm doing. I think you guys could probably do something better than what I'm doing, and you know, that's my thinking of it, right? Adding the armor is generally the most time-consuming piece of a build to me. The internals are kind of easy because the internals just plug and play, right? You're going to have batteries. You're going to have piping for the connectors all the way to the cockpit and to the cargo, and all that stuff kind of flows naturally out of the design. The armor plating and how you incorporate that is a little bit more of the challenging part of these builds. Too much armor plating will make the thing look a little too boxy. Too much of the same type of armor plating will just make it look boring. Armor plating in wrong areas, like covering up some of these turbines, might look bad, so you might not want to do that, and maybe you want to do a little bit more of an open vent design instead of a fully covered vent. And when I say vent, these are just angled pieces next to each other. They kind of look like flanges of a vent, right? It's not that it's actually functioning. It's all for looks here on the Uthris channel, right? So here's a little bit of a preview. I'm thinking it looks a little too bulky. Overall, I want the ship to be a little bit more diamond, right? Narrow on the front, wider exactly on the sides, and then it's gonna want to taper again closer to the rear. And to do that, I decided that there's too many right angles, okay? So best thing to do is to just bite the bullet and say, well, I'm gonna have a thicker armor plate, that's fine, but at least I can get an angle in here. And angles can make the thing look more agile, even if it has a thicker look to the armor, because there's no real good half armor block 45-degree angle, right? So this way you can have a little bit of both worlds on here, and you can also leave parts of it open so you can see the engines below it just through the gaps, because you know you'd want good ventilation in those areas. And then you just continue the angle back to roughly where you would want it, and then at that stage you're free to thin it out, okay? Because you're going to go straight again, so go straight for a little while, thin it out, right? Make it a little bit of a blade, and then you can angle it back like that diamond look, that actual planned look. The first iteration didn't go well, and so you just strip it down and try again, right? Don't be afraid to start over. Starting over in any creative project, in my opinion, in doing iterations, will almost always result in a stronger project, either in the sense that what you tried is just naturally better than the previous attempt, or what it might do is solidify your choice to stick with the previous design, right? And maybe you can interpret or incorporate designs from those things. I didn't like the thrusters up top. I felt like it made the top side too bulky. We're going to be fixing that in a second. And I also didn't want any armor platings going over the vertical thrusters. It just looked too bulky, too big, like it had really big shoulders, you know, and I wanted to make it look a little bit more thin and elegant, and you know, that's kind of the overall look that I want here. So I'm kind of zipping around, you know, taking a good distant view of it, trying to decide on what to do, and that can take me 10-15 minutes of just flying around, picturing something in my head, then trying to recreate it, deleting large sections, reworking large sections. Like at the top, how we have a wedge piece pointing upwards to create more of a tail fin type texture across the surface. Again, is that applying any flight surface on here? It just looks a little cool, right? And then on the sides, we'll do longer wedge pieces and shorter wedge pieces so that we get some shape variety and a little bit more design language showing there. The landing gear, we're gonna probably come down vertically for a little bit and then angle a little bit as well so that we can get, you know, just a tapering effect. Nothing should be a perfectly straight line, whether you angle that to the side so it feels like it has a little bit more of a wider stance, or if you angle that to the back so where it feels like it has more of like a stance that it could shoot off forward, like, right? Because all these things kind of tell you what your ship is going to be good at, and I would picture a wider stance would be better at lifting heavier things, or it might make it look a little bit more industrial than a narrow stance, or something where things are a little bit more streamlined, right? Antenna placement is important. Don't think to yourselves that it's not. I think it is. Getting that antenna dish in a right spot can definitely sell the believability of the ship. It's right above the cockpit. That might look okay for some ships. This one, I didn't like it there, so I put it on the back, and I think that added a nice little detail piece on the back side of the ship. So it's just those little things that you want. You want all the armor pieces to kind of slightly cover up the internals, or at least I do, and then leave some of it vulnerable. You know, I'm not looking to make the most protected ship. I am looking to make a pretty effective vessel that both looks good and will function decently well enough for that specific role. Multi-role ships to me are insanely hard to do, because at that point you are essentially trying to balance everything at once. But these ships where they have one singular purpose are more interesting, because not only do you start introducing more ships to your fleet, you start introducing very specific design decisions that facilitate that singular purpose, and that drives the rest of the build. It's just kind of an interesting kind of note, you know, that I have after doing these for a little while. Color scheme. I prefer two tones myself, for just like for all of our other builds. Our color scheme for all of our industrial stuff has been yellow and dark gray. So we're going to do that again here. This kind of signals to me that this is a non-combative ship. This is something that if you are approaching a outpost or kind of a planet-side base and see these flying around, you kind of know that these are more of the workhorses of that facility, not necessarily the guards. Now, if you saw the white ships flying around, you might notice that they have a little bit more weapons on those. And that would be, you know, something, hopefully that would bring worry to anyone that wanted to attack the area. Anyways, that's it for the little speed build section. I know these go very quickly. It's designed like that. This is not a tutorial again. So I know I get a decent amount of comments that people say I go too quickly. You know, this is more for inspiration and a rough guide as to what I had in my head when I was building these. So if you want to see a more slower process, come to the streams. So let's go check it out in the game. All right, everyone, so here we are. We're taking a look at the finished light kind of cargo mover and salvaging mover as well. And this thing, I think, has kind of a unique look, but also, it's still in line with everything else that we've built so far for this pack. It's got a nice light winglet style, multi-layered and tiered throughout the design around a lot of the thrusters. The bottom, again, pretty bare bone, exposing a lot of those internal components that I really like to see in my ship designs. A nice, well-supported landing gear system out the back. We got the lights blinking, green right side, red left side. That's all looking nice. We got plenty of power with batteries. The connection point is working, and everything is, within the scale that we've kind of established with all the rest of these. The front arm and everything, it to be honest, is a little bit of a weird looking ship. I kind of want to think of it like a mosquito a bit, because it has a little bit of that needle nose design here, and with that industrial cockpit and stuff. I kind of wanted something that had the cockpit closer to the back, but it turns out that we kind of made something where the cockpit was still roughly in the middle of the ship. It's funny how you kind of set out those goals, and sometimes you achieve them, sometimes you don't. I think, back here, the bomber and the way that the long nose on this thing kind of comes forward is just so lovely. I wish I could have captured that a little bit more so on this build, but due to its job and its need for thrust and power, we're going to have to kind of chalk it up to the design decisions here of the architects. We have an interesting configuration on the front. I did edit it a little bit from the speed build because I was worried that it wasn't going to be stable enough. Through some testing of some heavier objects, these rotors like to wiggle. And if you start wiggling, it kind of makes a wave effect, and you just constantly bounce around and you have no control over where you're going. So I want to try and avoid that. We got landing gear for additional support, and we're going to be using inertia lock on these rotors. Classic yellow color with the dark gray undertone for our utility ships. It's got plenty of downward thrust and 3 back-facing thrust as well for that acceleration. Only 2 reversing thrust. I don't know if that's going to be an issue, and honestly, probably not enough lateral thrust either. So I don't know what the maximum carry weight of this thing is, but I'm going to assume if you use this in conjunction with the grinding ship, you probably have a good team. Okay, you're going to be able to cut small enough pieces where that thing can probably grab it. So I do want to do a bit of a test here on camera for you guys so you can see maybe some of its limitations and its applications. So I'll go ahead and make a copy of it here. We have a simple control scheme. 4 is going to rotate out our legs, which are going to swing forward. Now, one of the changes is these landing gears on the top and bottom, and they have extra connection points. So if I wanted to, we can go ahead and lock those landing gears. And then we can share inertia dampeners as well on the rotors. And that's hopefully going to give us a really nice solid lock here on the front. So I went ahead and kind of butchered the kind of test silos here, and I cut off a big chunk of it. I think it weighs about 110,000 kilograms, and I think that's going to be a good test here. So we are ready to lock. We'll lock with the front legs, and we will lift up. So our total weight now is 163,000, which is definitely up there. And you can see this thing is moving surprisingly agile in terms of acceleration. Turning is a bit of a slog just due to the weight of it, but if you tilt your aircraft a little bit and turn, you can kind of get something going here. It's going to add that weight. It's going to add some drifting kind of functionality to this, and of course, the bigger the piece here that we carry, the more gyroscopes you might either add onto the salvage piece or onto the craft itself. It's kind of it's going to have to fit your needs as a pilot and salvage company. But we can definitely move around with this, and take it to a destination. Landing or dropping it off in a little kind of haphazard way might be the best option, but as long as you stay relatively level in the horizon, you definitely have enough power to carry this around. And again, this is double the weight of the aircraft itself, so I'm honestly kind of surprised that it's even carrying this. So right now, again, 163,000. I think that's a good solid test, so we'll just go ahead and just throw it down there and watch that kind of get delivered into the ice. There we go. Lovely. Lovely, lovely. So, you know, I'm pretty confident that this ship could lift up any of our other vessels and deliver it around, whether we do that with the lower landing gear or the front nose attachment. It's kind of up to you. Here, let's try and pick up maybe the heaviest ship. So that'd be probably the heavy fighter, if I had to guess. So we might only get one landing gear attached on this, which should be enough. Oh no, we got two. Might help if I disable the landing gear on this. There we go. And we can just go ahead and pick that up. Again, this actually weighs about as much as that large piece. So you can see, if this thing was damaged and needed to lift home, and in fact, I think even the thrusters are fighting it, you know, but we have kind of full control over this vessel now, and we can deliver it to wherever we need to. Let me try turning this off and see if that controls a little bit better because of the thruster. Oh no. Okay, yes. All right, so we still got it. We still got it. So yeah, we could probably deliver this wherever we want. I don't know if the vertical thrust is enough. You can see we kind of slowly drift downwards, but we can kind of easily counteract that well enough ourselves. So let's set this down, hopefully a little gently. Gotta be careful coming down with it. There we go. So, you know, you can deliver a spacecraft with it and whatever you need. So, it's a nice little ship. The front merge block is, if you don't want to use the legs and you want to weld a merge block on, you totally can. It might provide a little bit additional control, especially if the thing you're carrying already has thrusters. It'll combine the two grids so that you could potentially use the salvage thrusters as your own, and that would just increase how much this thing could carry. With that, I think this episode's over. Thank you guys so much for watching. There will be a link in the description of this video to the ship pack. If you want to download it yourself, use it, definitely do so. And thanks for watching. Subscribe for more creative goodness such as this. Hit that like button, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.